Welcome back. This is going to be an introduction to a little yoga philosophy, some Ayurveda, the Indian traditional medical point of view, and on subtle anatomy and how the yoga practices that are in this program are related to these things. So yoga philosophy boils down to what's written in the Yoga Sutras as the classical philosophical view on yoga. And in the Yoga Sutras, you have what are called the 8 limbs. And the 8 limbs of yoga are to, 1, live a moral life, 5 moral principles, daily observances. This is where a little dietary aspect of what should or should not be eaten comes in. So having a clean diet and having cleanliness on a daily basis are part of these daily observances. Of course, also yoga practice and breathing practice and meditative practices are daily observances. But then you have asana, which is postural practice, pranayama, which is breathing practices, pratyahara, which means turning your awareness inward, dharana, which means focused attention, dhyana, which means meditation, and samadhi, which means enlightenment. So fundamentally, the yoga philosophy is pointing us towards a shift in consciousness, or pointing us towards a meditative state or enlightened state. So what exactly that is, I'm not going to get into, trying to describe to you what the end goal is. You'd have to read the Yoga Sutras, but you can see how, from a modern point of view, it's like acknowledging the body and the breath and daily practices which help to put you into a different state of mind. And so to be more relaxed and to be calmer, really, in a way, you could say it's the path towards that relaxation and that calm way of being. And so I'll just leave that there. And to look at Ayurveda, the reason I bring in Ayurveda is because Ayurveda, the Indian medical system, traditional Indian medical system, is considered a sister science of yoga. And so not only does Ayurveda use yoga practices as you could say, prescription for doing certain practices to stay healthy or to address certain imbalances, but also yoga uses the framework of Ayurveda as a way of coming to understand what we're doing. And so very similar in both of these traditions. They're intertwined, as I said, but also you can see they're different in certain unique ways, but so similar that you could say they're pretty much the same thing. So in Ayurveda, there's a concept of the 5 elements. They are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So there's a 5-element theory in the Chinese system as well, and some people correlate the 5 elements from the Chinese system with these 5 elements in Ayurveda. But without getting carried away with that, I'll just say this 5-element theory is really a key for understanding ourselves, understanding what we should or should not be doing, understanding our diet, and so on. It sounds like a very simple way of looking at things, and it is, but really, just to back up from that for a moment, I'll just say there are certain preliminaries that are there. It's about what you're ingesting, so from your drinks to food to herbs, and also what your environment is very important. So the season, and then knowing what your tendencies are. So you take these 5 elements, and you can see they get grouped into 3 groups: of two of these. So I'll explain what I mean. These become the constitutions in Ayurveda. So ether and air become what's called vata. Fire and water become what's called pitta. And water and earth become what's called kapha. These are the three main constitutions in Ayurveda. So once you know that you are a vata, let's say, then that tells you a lot about how you can balance yourself out. So you'll see in my book, basically, if you can do an Ayurvedic survey and find out what your predominant constitution is, then it gives you insight into how you can relate to pretty much everything. Especially certain times of the year, there's these tendencies that we each have because of our constitution might be aggravated. And so what you need to do is keep in mind what are the counter actions. It's all about balance, right? So if you tend to have more heat, more intensity, all of that, then you need to bring in more calm. If you are already a very calm and kind of, you tend towards not moving that much, more lethargic, then you need to bring in a little more of the intensity and the heat. So it's a very common sense kind of approach to things. Now, when it comes to diet, yoga and Ayurveda agree that you should eat a pure diet, clean. And so in the modern world, it's very hard, really, it's getting harder to eat pure, clean diet because of so many pesticides and toxins and processed foods and so on. I'm not here to get into, dissing any foods, but just to say, if you can eat only your foods that are completely clean, no antibiotics, none of that stuff. If you could just eliminate and still get all your essential nutrients, that would be the key, right? Now, yoga and Ayurveda, yoga practitioners tend to be vegetarians. Indians traditionally have been vegetarians, but Ayurveda doesn't necessarily say you have to be vegetarian, but it talks about balance, the balance of the five elements again, and they are reflected in the tastes. So you have these different tastes, right? Sour, salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent. And so balancing the tastes, now I like to translate it into also, of course, having balanced intake of your essential nutrients, even though in Ayurveda and yoga they don't really talk about that. But so that's the diet part. I know that's really simple and almost too short to get into, but then what I want to get into is talk about the connection to the subtle body in yoga. And you can see that you have these energy lines. In the yoga tradition, they talk about energy flowing through the body, right? So through the limbs and through the spine and different connections to different organs, like to the eyes, to the ears, and to all the internal organs. And so in doing your yoga practice, you are actually affecting these different organs. And also, as you work with these energy lines, you're just innately going to be doing this. As you release your joints, you're also going to affect the three main lines, which are the Ida and Pingala on the two sides, and the Shushumna, which is right in the central channel of the spine. And within that, and that balancing, then there's also what is referred to as the chakras. Now, I refer to this briefly in the book just to maybe entice everyone.